Hi, this is Catherine Schneider from the Fitchburg Historical Society, and we have been really enjoying doing a series of interviews with people who were instrumental in bringing about the Fitchburg Public Library. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Phil Sveum. Of course, a library does not get built unless it has finances. And we have talked just a little bit about the financing of the library, but it's such an important aspect of getting that building, the beautiful building done in Fitchburg. And so Phil's part in that very instrumentally, along with others, to hear that story this morning. So Phil, welcome, and thank you for being with us this morning. I thought that we'd just start out by finding out maybe a bit about your background and connections in Fitchburg. Could you fill us in a little bit on that?
Well, I was very active in the business community. I was actually back to early 90s. I was actually on council as an alder for 4 years, and I've always had a passion for community involvement, whether it was the Economic Development Commission, or being an alder, or just the Chamber of Commerce. We helped start that. So there was a lot of different things over the years that Fitchburg kind of seemed to be in need of as a young city. And of course, everybody's always looking for volunteers. So I was never very shy about raising my hand and say, yeah, I'll help out however you think I can. So I think it's important for people to be involved in their community, whatever time they can give, whatever expertise they can bring to the table. As time went on, I obviously got to know a lot of the other business people in Fitchburg, and we all kind of had a lot of similar goals, and where we thought it would be nice to see the community go. And that is providing great services to the people that are living and paying taxes and enjoying the community in total.
Great, great. Well, and these things cannot be done without that volunteer help, and
Right.
to give the example of that, one of the people who just volunteered a great deal of your time through the years in Fitchburg. Well, kind of going back in time, I know the library actually opened in 2011, but there was a lot that needed to be done before that could happen. So
Yeah.
maybe if you could fill us in on kind of the financial picture as it looked prior to the library being built, in terms of maybe public monies through referendum, and then private contributions that were needed for the city of Fitchburg to actually be able to move forward with building a library. Could you kind of fill us in on that?
Well, part of the math here was looking at what Fitchburg was spending with Dane County Library Services. And I think at the time it was somewhere between 900,000 and $1 million a year. And I don't recall exactly, but they base it on the usage of the community. So that was one part of the puzzle to say, look, we can either eliminate this and have our own facility, or at least eliminate part of it. That will then be savings on that end, and obviously understand there's going to be operational costs to having our own facility. So it took a lot of convincing at the time with the council, and obviously they have to be very wary of the costs associated with operating a city, and this was going to be one more. Now, I'm not sure when it was, probably the early 2000s, maybe it was in the 90s. They had another referendum, and it was soundly defeated to build a library. And for whatever reason, sometimes it's just a matter of timing. And of course, the city was growing quickly, so there was a lot of new people that really were looking to have a library. And then our challenge was, okay, what is it? Is this going to be an old traditional library that we all went to when we were kids? And we knew things had obviously changed with the needs of the community, and obviously the traditional parts of the library, but also incorporating a lot of the community needs with meeting spaces that I think were we probably underestimated what the needs were with that. But we knew that that was going to have to be part of this to make it a long-standing facility for the city. And I think that the correct mix was found, and but then we needed to embark on, and I don't remember the exact number. It was right around $3 million that we that we were tasked to raise from. And Mary Kay Zimbrick and I did that heavy lifting, and she really worked a lot with the Friends of the library. And I worked more with the business community and sitting down with them. Obviously, Bill Linton made a huge donation to start the project off. I mean, none of us were fundraisers. We didn't know what we were doing. We had hired a temporary librarian, and we also brought in a fundraiser to get some advice from. But none of us were good at running around and asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations. It was just more of a relationship, and hopefully those folks that we contacted understood what the value was in having a library as part of the community. But I think that after Bill Linton's donation of about $1 million, as I learned from the professional fundraisers, what you try to do is, if you could picture a large mason jar, what you try to do is get the biggest rocks in first, and then you fill it in with all the sand to fill it all up, right? So for some reason, I've never forgotten that. So obviously Bill's donation was a big rock. And then, other companies, businesses like Oak Bank and Gordon Flesh made a significant investment. And we wanted to make sure as well that they were all kind of historically named in the building, whether it was a room named after their business. We had a very large electronic board where you come in, and just around the corner from the entry, and it shows those that made the donations. So we wanted to express our thanks, and we want to make sure the community knew. But I have to say that, without a grassroots effort, it's all that sand that comes in over the big rocks. How do you turn down these Friends of the Library? I mean, they were unbelievably full of energy. And I'm sure you've talked with them as well, but it doesn't get done without them doing their book sales and just their never give up attitude. And frankly, at an age that, they will have limited time probably to be able to enjoy the library, but they knew that it would be a good thing for the younger generations as well. So that energy was just as important in raising money as making the ask, because there was always revenue coming in. And we worked very closely with the Madison Community Foundation, and they contracted with us to handle all of the donations. And so every check that was received was given to them. We kept a tote board, basically, of everybody that made their commitment and wrote us checks. And so it was pretty interesting watching that fund grow.
I'll bet. And just to hear again, you reiterate, as others have, how much was involved in terms of the commitment of many, 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 many people. And
Oh,
couldn't have been done without that so-called village to make it happen. And
no doubt.
the friends of the public library, Fitchburg Public Library, the board, and the fundraising, the commitment of the business community. I mean, it was like a total community effort to make it happen. And that has been reiterated by, I think, every person that's talked about the library on these interviews, Phil. So you are again bringing that forth. It obviously impressed every person who was involved in making the library come to be. Well, I would like to know how you yourself became interested in the campaign to raise funds for the building of a library in Fitchburg. Kind of what motivated you?
Well, I think it's just like anybody else that got involved, Catherine. It's just a matter of community pride and looking to the future and thinking, okay, I mean, obviously Fitchburg has struggled with identity over the years without a school district, and it just, I mean, there were a lot of naysayers at the time. I mean, there were a lot of people that did not want this. But after it was built and up and operating, I'd run into them at the coffee shop, because we all kind of knew each other. They would tell me, no, I don't want it, and all this kind of stuff. And they'd say that Oh yeah, well, I was in the library the other day. And I said, I know you were against it, but you're paying for it. You should use it.
Ah,
Well, I mean, it's just, it became, I think, those that were probably opposed just as much as those that were in favor of it, use it all the time.
mm-hmm,
Go there and
mm-hmm.
read, they go relax, they use the community rooms. So I think that, and I don't want to say grudgingly, but I think they understand the importance of it, not just for now, but also in the future of the city. But it did
Mm-hmm.
help. I think it did help provide some community space as well that people could go have, which I think is used, like I said, much more than we ever anticipated.
Oh, for sure. It is.
So, but I
It's a,
think that's why everybody gets involved in this, Catherine. You feel, not, I guess, somewhat obligated because this is your home that you say, okay, I want to do this. I think it's worthwhile. And we had a and I'll tell you what, Mary Kay is, one of the most, when she commits herself to something, there's no getting in her way. What's going to happen?
yes, yes. And Mary Kay's interview with us was just that certainly came forth her
Oh
total
yeah.
commitment to the library, making the library come to be. Well, you've talked about the support from the business community. And I think what made them kind of feel like they wanted to step forward too, to get involved in financing the library. Um, Maybe my question I'm curious about is what offered you maybe the most challenge in terms of fundraising and then also the greatest reward? So maybe both sides of the coin with that.
Well, the challenge is not knowing what you're doing. Again, we're being in business. I mean, it's and a small business owner, it's 7 days a week basically, and carving out time to be able to make appointments with other business people that are very busy like you are, was probably one of the biggest challenges. And of course, we're coming out of a recession as well. And so it was pretty gratifying that those that really stepped up and made that commitment to the community. The other challenge is that many of these businesses still, and that's not even a criticism, it's just a matter of fact. I mean, their return address is Madison. Uh, and it's because they may be regional companies, they may be global companies, and people know where Madison is. And so it is that community identity that they have to struggle with a little bit. And I think I think this is a very generous county. Okay. Dane County, the business community is unbelievably generous with donations. I don't think people understand that as much as those of us that are continually asked for donations. But that the business community is so strong and so committed to the betterment of Dane County that when you're raising money for something like this, that we learned that it was a pride of the area as well. It wasn't just specifically where that business was located. Because many times that business owner doesn't live in Fitchburg, they just have their business in Fitchburg. So I think they looked at a kind of a macro sense. And even though our library needs could still have been served out of Madison, they felt that their employees that moved to Fitchburg would appreciate having a library.
Mhm.
So it was also that kind of holistic future, or how they looked at things. Okay, how can I serve my business better? And that's a huge trait of a guy like Bill Linton and Bob Gorsuch. I mean, these guys that are just so community committed that they made it a little bit easier than those that maybe didn't have a lot of that prior commitment to
Mhm.
Fitchburg.
Mhm.
So, I was always a little uh, cautious when I went in and sat down with that owner that I knew about asking for 100 grand or $300,000. Um, it just, because like I said, we're coming out of recession, and it's hard to know where everybody stood with
Mhm.
everything. So I think it was a relationship, and I think Mary Kay would probably agree that the relationships with people that we had long before we started raising money for this paid off big time.
Mhm. Relationships surely are the core of building community, aren't they? And
Absolutely. Of
yeah,
everything.
great of everything.
And they are, frankly, the business owners understood that too, because that's how they built their business too.
Mm.
It's having relationships with people
Mhm.
and look at everything as a transaction.
Mhm.
Looked upon it as something that they had built positive relationships in the community with individuals, and there was a trust factor, a confidence factor that was part of it.
Well said, Phil. Thank you. Well, what would you say maybe was your greatest reward then of working on this campaign?
Well, hiring Wendy Rawson, I think, was a huge, just a huge get for the library.
So the
uh,
head librarian, the first and only at this
and
point
only, yeah,
director at the
tremendous
library.
asset to the people. Watching the Friends of the Library work, I really got a charge out of all of that. I really did. And I got to know a lot of those ladies um, that made up most of it were women, older women that really spearheaded all of that. And I like I said, it was fun to see the energy that they had and the total commitment that they had towards building this building.
Mhm.
And they knew it was going to take all of us to do it. Um, and I think just the community started to rally around it once it was approved and the council stepped up. I'm trying to think. I know Sean Paff was the mayor when it was completed, and I think maybe it was Jay Allen who was the mayor when we finally got the council to approve them borrowing for it, which is I think was close to $10 million. So it was not cheap,
Mhm.
but like any asset or infrastructure improvement in a community, none of it's inexpensive, and it
Mhm.
is a long-term building. The other thing is that um, we really made it energy, um, not necessarily independent, but pretty close. And with all the solar that went on the roof and the geothermal wells that went in, I was astounded. I think somebody told me there were 70 wells that were put in for that library, um, which is an amazing commitment. It was an expensive undertaking that somebody decided to throw in at the end that, okay, well, it's like we got to raise some more money. But it was, I think at that time that the city and the politicians or the community leaders at the city were really sold on the fact that this was a good thing and we're just going to make it happen the best way possible.
Mhm. Yes, to make it the best possible and to look to the future
Yeah.
and the trends that were pointing in the direction of those kind of things like the solar panels and et
Yeah.
cetera. Great, that's great. So, and people are continuing to appreciate those decisions that were made at that time. Well, Phil, a final question for you, and that is, do you have a particular experience from your fundraising that maybe stands out to you that you'd like to share? Any maybe story that's special?
Catherine, it's just getting to the goal line, and getting
Mhm,
it
mhm.
done. Um, it was just a big moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than that, you just had the typical things to deal with on an ongoing basis and make sure it got done right. And
Mhm,
the money was all appropriately allocated and we had good partners with all of that and that there was a built-in trust that things were being done the way they should be. And I don't know, we just kept trying to find those $25,000 gifts and the $1,000 gifts and the $500 gifts and just doing whatever anybody could to help get it
mhm.
done. And I think it's a great jewel of the community.
Oh, there is no doubt about it. And you found, as you're describing that, finding the $1,000, $25,000, whatever, people were able to do to fill in the rocks and the sand. It was all important to get to the top and to make it happen. So, well, congratulations on a fantastic fundraising effort, as well as a community effort, as you said.
Mm.
So many involved in making it happen, and this wonderful building that is enjoyed by the whole community
Yeah.
and beyond, I might add. including the Fitchburg Historical Society, because we are housed
That's
there
right.
and we are
Yeah.
so delighted with having our space there too. And also having our virtual presence, which is fitchburghistory.org, so that we can reach out into beyond the borders of the community too, electronically, but also having that wonderful physical presence in the library and having programs available in those great meeting rooms too. So
I'm glad you mentioned the Historical Society because after it was completed, they moved in. I stopped over there one day and they were so happy and proud of their space. And that was, that was worth a lot too, frankly.
well, we have been so appreciative.
Yeah.
So Phil, just to thank you so much, and then knowing you're in Arizona and that you took the time to be with us and looking back on what was done to make the library happen, it didn't just happen happenstance. There was a great deal of effort, planning, fundraising that went then into this wonderful library that we have. So thank you for your part in that, as well as so many in the community. Lot to be proud of, and as you said, it's a jewel in Fitchburg.
It is.
Yes. So thanks so much, Phil.
All right, Catherine.